Good evening, everybody. That was very good evening, everybody. Good evening. Much better. Where's Mike Clay? We need a bigger theater in Port Moody, Mike. Come on, let's get after that, will you? Welcome to the All Candidates debate for the riding in Port Moody-Coquitlam. I'm Mike Hind. I'm the Executive Director for the Chamber of Commerce, and thanks everybody for coming out tonight. If you're not in-house or you want to view this online, you go to tricitieschamber.com and click on the webcast banner, and you can view everything online tonight. I have a couple of thank yous before we get started. I want to thank Pastapolo, Fred Sufi, who is sponsoring tonight's webcast. Thanks, Fred, for doing that. And the Tri-City News, who is sponsored as our media sponsor. So a big round of applause for our two sponsors. So without any further ado, I'm going to turn over to our MC for tonight. He's a long-time chamber member, and you may know him. His name is Dave Teixeira. Dave from Dave.ca. Dave, come on out.
How's everyone doing this evening? Are you guys ready for some political debate? That's what we're here for. In all seriousness, thank you very, very much for coming out on a beautiful evening. You guys have a lot of choices to be other places, but you're here. And in all sincerity, I see some young people in the crowd, and I'm, somewhat surprised at that. It's great, because people keep saying, you young folks, us millennial types like you and I, we just don't come out and get involved in these things, and it's great to see that you guys are here, and it's great to see that most of Port Moody and Coquitlam demographically are all here. So we're going to have a great evening, and for the next 2 hours, we're going to hear from our four main candidates here in the riding. The candidates will all have 1 minute to do their opening address. We've made a draw in the back, and we'll get to that in a moment. After the 1 minute address, we'll then get to our questions. The Chamber has issued us 5 questions. We will then also alternate through those 5 questions with questions from you guys via Pigeonhole. So this is a great opportunity for you to get involved. The order will be as we're about to see, and then we'll rotate through, so the person who speaks first on the next question will speak last, etc., etc. So everyone will have an opportunity to speak first, second, third, and fourth. Make sense? All right, so without any further ado, let's introduce our first candidate to the stage. He's with the Conservative Party of Canada. He is Mr. Tim Laidler. From the Green Party of Canada, we have Marcus Majdin. From the Liberal Party, Jesse Adcock. And from the NDP, Mr. Finn Donnelly. Awesome, so welcome to all 4 candidates. I'm glad you guys could all be here today. There was always rumors of people not showing up, and it's great to see that the full house out here is also the full house on the stage. You guys could be out door knocking, but this is a good way to door knock with 200 or so people all at the same time, so welcome. You will see again, for the folks in the crowd and for the candidates behind you, are some of the questions that may or may not be answered, or sorry, asked, I suppose, hopefully will be answered when asked, later on throughout the evening. So if you wish to participate again, go to pigeonhole.at, type in the password TCCACD, and you're out and about. Anyone having a problem signing into that right now? No? Also, just to remind everyone, we are recording this, and it's being streamed intergalactically across the interweb as we speak, and so you can also check this out afterwards and check out the whole 2 hours of debate here in Port Moody. So without any further ado, we'll start with the candidate 1 minute statements. Again, we have the clock up here, we have a bell down here, and the first up is Marcus Majdin.
So, good evening, everyone, and welcome. My name is Marcus Majdin. I'm the Green Party candidate for the riding of Port Moody-Coquitlam. I would like to thank the Tri-City Chamber of Commerce for organizing tonight's event and the audience for coming out and joining us for the debate. While I don't have the impressive experience of a career politician, I bring with me an international perspective, the experience as a small business owner, and the courage to have joined Canada's smallest of the 4 leading political parties, the one which doesn't work with its MPs. Looking at the near unsurmountable challenges ahead, I believe that the Green Party has set up the right platform to address the changes needed to turn our country into a global leader. As citizen of a G7 country, with 3 of the longest shorelines in the world and with the sheer geographical reach of our nation, we have a heightened responsibility to do the right things to safeguard the lives and future of all generations. There are no lost votes when voting green. Every vote increases just our voice. It shows the protest of increasing number of Canadians who don't disagree with the Treasury parties. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. And just before we go to yes, of course. All right, on to our second candidate from the Conservative Party of Canada, Mr. Tim Laidler.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the Chamber for hosting this tonight. I'd like to also thank every one of you for coming out tonight and factoring in the local candidate and the decision you're going to make on October 19th. This election, we have a very, very important decision. We can stick with Prime Minister Stephen Harper on his proven track record protecting our economy, or we can risk going in a completely different direction under the NDP with Thomas Mulcair as their leader. I served in Afghanistan with Canadian forces. I saw firsthand just how horrible the human suffering and devastation can come when there is a lack of security and a broken economy. This left a permanent mark on me, which has inspired me to run, and once I want to stand up, I want to work hard to protect our quality of life here, protect our economy, stand up for security, and make sure the Tri-Cities has the same quality of life that I grew up here knowing. Thank you very much.
And our third candidate, Finn Donnelly.
Hi, my name is Finn Donnelly. I'm the NDP candidate for Port Moody-Coquitlam. I've been the MP for the past 6 years and the NDP Fisheries and Oceans Critic and Deputy Infrastructure Critic. I've also served on Coquitlam City Council for 7 years, and I've lived in the Tri-Cities for 45 years. I've knocked on thousands of doors, and people tell me they want their federal government to be more to focus on affordability. An NDP government would focus on affordability. We'll bring in $15 a day childcare and improve affordable housing. We'll bring in healthcare, or improve healthcare, pharmacare and home care, and we'll look at improving supports for cities through better infrastructure and transit. And we'll help our small businesses by reducing the tax rate from 11 to 9% and investing in manufacturing. And we'll protect our environment and take action on climate change. We'll help our seniors by reducing the retirement age back to 65 and increasing CPP, OAS, and GIS. Vote Finn Donnelly and the NDP on October 19th. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Finn. And Jessie Adcock from the Liberal Party of Canada.
Hi, thank you to the Chamber, Dave, for hosting, and to everybody here that's taken time out of their evenings to learn a little bit about the 4 candidates in this race. I wanted to say that my story is a little bit different. I feel like the last 10 years have been a lost 10 years. I feel like we have more potential as a country, we have more potential as a society. Whether we're talking about our economy, whether we're talking about our social systems and our social programs, whether we're talking about our role in the global stage. I feel that Justin Trudeau and the Liberals have the best plan. I've worked in public sector and private sector all across the world in telecommunications and global banking, and I currently work for the City of Vancouver as their Chief Digital Officer, a unique role in Canada and in the world. And what I've learned is that the platform of the Liberal Party is the most progressive of the parties. I believe that everybody needs to look at the future and what is the best plan for us to grow our country, improve our country, and do better. In terms of my attachment to this community, it dates back to when I was 16 years old, 25 years ago. I'll say the rest later.
Thank you very much. All right, and before we continue, if I could just remind everyone to please turn off or put to silent your cell phones. If your phone goes off, you buy drinks for everyone in the audience. That's a new rule that we've all agreed to in the back, and we'll try that here tonight. As well, just to let you know what the format will be, we'll be doing 5 questions from the Chamber, as I said, and in between those questions there'll also be questions from Pigeonhole. So that's your opportunity to ask questions, as people have been doing for about the last week or so on pigeonhole.at, and we'd love for you to take part, I should say. So the way this will work is we'll have one of the candidates speak for 1 minute on this particular issue or topic or question, and then the other candidates have up to 6 minutes to converse amongst themselves. We have all agreed in the back to keep it clean, no shots below the belt, and we've searched them for foreign objects. So this will be a clean conversation. I have said to them that if the conversation goes off the rails a little bit, I'll try to bring it back on. We want to stay on topic, stay on point, and that way you guys have the opportunity to learn what's going on from these 4 candidates on the stage. But before we get to the question, let me ask here, who here is undecided on your vote this evening? Okay, so if I had to guess, maybe about 15% of the crowd, thereabouts. So obviously, I guess the other half, you are interested and you have made your decision. So for those of you who have not made a decision, thank you for coming out, because this is your opportunity to hopefully learn a lot more from these candidates. So without any further ado, we'll go with our first question, which will be answered, or started to be answered, by Tim Laidlaw from the Conservative Party. And this is a question from the Chamber on the topic of small business. Over 98% of businesses in Canada are considered small business with less than 100 employees. The Chamber membership is overwhelmingly made up of small business under 100 employees. This is a two-part question. What do you believe is the biggest issue facing small businesses in the Tri-Cities? And what will your party do to address this issue and help small businesses thrive? Mr. Laidlaw, you have 1 minute.
As we all know, the majority of Canadian workforce actually work for small businesses. It's absolutely critical that we continue to allow small businesses to thrive and grow, especially here in the Tri-Cities. The Conservative Party has actually already lowered the small business tax rate from 11% to 9% in a phased-in approach, something that the NDP decided to vote against, yet now they campaign for. The most important thing for Tri-City small businesses, though, is an ability to grow and attract employees to work for them. We have trade, we have the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which is being negotiated and finalized right now. This is an opportunity for those small businesses to grow. And the next part is something I think is really, really important here locally, is that the workers that are going to work in these small businesses, they need to be able to afford to live here in the community. They want to be able to grow their families, raise their families here, and that's something that is becoming more and more difficult. If I'm elected as the next member of Parliament, that is the #1 thing I'm going to champion. I'm going to make sure that we're taking a look at where the foreign investment and speculation on real estate market is coming from, and I'll be putting forward policies to address it. Thank you.
And the other candidates can now jump in for a 6-minute conversation amongst the four of you.
I just wanted to clarify a couple of things. That it was Thomas Mulcair and the NDP that have proposed the small business tax cut from 11% to 9%. And it's actually the Conservatives have not brought it in yet. They promised to bring it in and phase it in over a number of years. So we will actually bring it in quicker and phase it in faster with an NDP government than what Mr. Laidlaw has commented on.
I think it is a very unique election in this case because we have the NDP actually going to the right of the Liberals on this issue. I agree with lowering taxes, but no one will be fooled. Every NDP government right across this country has raised taxes. The NDP have promised to raise taxes on companies to make things we buy here in the Tri-Cities more expensive. That's the way they do business, and that's fair enough. But with the Conservatives, we will lower taxes like we always have and like we will continue to do.
No one buys that the NDP is moving to the right with support with small, medium, and enterprises in the Tri-Cities and across the country. We're focused on healthcare, childcare. That's what Mulcair will bring in. So we're focused on, we're going to support our small business. We're going to support those families that need it. We're going to support our seniors. This is not just something that the NDP is moving to the right on. This is something that's being criticized or commented. But the NDP has long roots in terms of public Medicare, and Tom Mulcair is focused on bringing childcare in nationally, which will help the economy, it'll help women, it'll help families, and bring in much-needed dollars into the Tri-City area.
I want to get in on opportunity. I think one of the things, sorry, I'm going to have to fight to get in there clearly to make it known that it's a four-way race. I think that opportunity is a key challenge, whether it's opportunity in terms of access to skilled labor, whether it's opportunity in terms of access to new customers, new products, new innovations. Right now, we have basically constrained what we can do with the two promises to balance the budgets. What we haven't considered is that the existing economy hasn't grown, and small businesses cannot grow unless the economy grows. So the Liberal investment in social infrastructure will create more people who are capable of buying, it'll create a better quality of life, and it'll generate more stimulus within the economy. The investment in green infrastructure will create new industries and new technologies that we can create jobs in, and small businesses are the greatest producers of clean tech in Canada.
The Liberals, though, I will say, have not agreed to lower the tax rate.
That's not true, actually. The small business tax, we will honor the budget of 2015 and also reduce from 11% to 9%. And we've said that in our platform document, which, by the way, we're the only ones who've released a holistic platform document. So anybody can go and see it's in there. Well, the Green Party has
So
it.
if I quickly be allowed to throw in the Green Party's perspective on it. So many of the issues brought forward and the suggestions how to solve certain problems are supported by the Green Party. However, nobody seemed to care about untangling the red tape that is hindering small business to either grow or expand into new markets. I also feel that new law, when introduced, nobody seems to actually look at the impact it has on small businesses, and that too is hindering growth, competition, and introduction of new ideas. So everything else is wonderful, but if you don't do anything about the red tape, well, then the small business will remain to be stuck where they are.
And I think red tape is a great point to bring up, and that is often a hidden tax for businesses. Another way that businesses are being taxed by the other parties is through their CPP and their EI contributions. That means that employers are going to have to pay more, as well as employees are going to have to pay more. That is another form of tax, and that is what's going to hurt the Tri-City businesses. That's not going to help them. That's not going to help the people or the businesses.
And the Conservatives have had 10 years to help us.
Please, until the end, I'd appreciate that, so we can give them their full 6 minutes, folks. Thank you.
So the Conservatives have had 10 years to make those changes to help our small businesses, and they have neglected to do that. So on the eve of an election, they're promising to make these changes. An NDP government will see a change that will reduce the tax rate from 11 to 9%, putting $1.2 billion back into small businesses across the country. That's money in their pockets that they can use to reinvest in hiring people, and we know that they're the job growth engine of this country, and we need to support our small businesses, something the Conservatives have failed to do over the past 10 years.
So the Liberal Party also has a plan that goes beyond just doing what we already know how to do. They're talking about also a system that involves including young people, skills training, and getting EI premium insurance breaks, for example, for hiring youth that are 18 to 24. This is worth $80 million in the economy. We're also talking about reducing the premiums for EI from $263 to $231, which is something that nobody else is doing because everybody else just wants the status quo. The Liberals are talking about a holistic system for affordable housing, access to education, green infrastructure, new technologies, and we're the only ones talking about the Greens are. Us and the Greens are the only ones talking about something different.
So on
Thomas
top of
Mulcair,
this, the
the
Greens are
NDP
actually suggesting the establishment of a green venture capital fund, which would also make it possible for a small business to access the finances they need to not just maintain the status quo business as usual, but also again to promote their business, expand into new areas, and even have their own developments of ideas and technologies.
And just to end by agreeing with Mr. Donnelly, we did bring in our last tax measures in 2015 because we want to balance the budget. We're doing this in a responsible manner. We're not just making this up in the back of a napkin.
In an election year.
Thank you so much. Feel free to applaud now if you wish. All right, we'll see if this technology works here. And we have our first pigeonhole question of the evening. This means, of course, it came from the audience over the last week or perhaps in the last little while. And Finn, you'll be taking the first minute on this before we open it up for the 6-minute conversation. And the question is, and it's behind the candidates here on the screen, what is your party's position on the Trans-Pacific Partnership Trade Agreement? Is it good for Canada? Is it good for the Tri-Cities? And if I could, focus on that Tri-Cities, if you could, at the start, or at least in the first little bit as well, for all the candidates, because that's what we're here for as well. So thank you.
Sure, it's a great question because we don't know. We don't know because this is another secretive deal that's been discussed behind closed doors. So like so many of these trade deals, the devil's in the details. You need to see the details of what is involved in each of those trade agreements. So the TPP is no different. And this has been one of the most secretive deals that have been discussed behind closed doors. At least in the United States, they're providing their decision makers with some of the text, whereas in Canada, we're not seeing any of that. So we do not know what the details of the agreement are. So we don't know if there will be benefits to the Tri-Cities companies. We don't know if there will be benefits to Canadians. We won't be bound by this deal. An NDP government will not be bound by this deal until we see the details that are in the agreement. We don't trust Stephen Harper and the Conservatives because they have promised certain things that will be in agreements and they're not there, and that will cost jobs and communities.
And the rest of the candidates can now jump in.
So the moment actually the news came out that there was an agreement on TPP, I followed the news because in me there are two hearts, the German and the Canadian, and I'm following also the negotiations on TIP, which is comparable to TPP. And finding on Reuters that in the US, now they're all up in arms, and the trade deal faces skepticism in Congress, and not just there, also in Senate. So if we really need more evidence that that deal is not necessarily a good deal, we just have to look south of the border and look at their reaction. That here a government feels it is good enough for Canadians by keeping out the public. That's really not the way to go, right? And one important factor is that there will be a tribunal which multinationals can go, and if they feel the government is limiting them in their business dealings and costing them money, they can drag a national government to that tribunal. And the Canadian taxpayer will be on the hooks for whatever revenue will be lost claimed by that company.
I don't think you need to look south of the border for concern. We have just had a huge demonstration on Parliament Hill recently with dairy farmers that have expressed their concerns. They're concerned about what's in this deal and what Canada will give away. Our auto manufacturing sector is also concerned with what will be given away with this deal. Medication, prescription drugs are a huge concern. What will be the costs? Obviously, there will be benefits. You have to weigh the costs and the benefits like any other trade agreement to find out what's good for Canadians and what is not good for Canadian businesses, manufacturers, and others like farmers. So we have manufacturers right here in the Tri-Cities that will be impacted by this deal. Is it good for them? We need to see the details in order to make a sound judgment. The fact that it's coming out right now in an election, hugely suspicious. So we've had years where this could have been in front of Parliament, where this could have been discussed. I know my colleague Don Davies, the NDP trade critic, has been extremely frustrated with not getting any information from the Conservative government on this deal.
I think strong leadership always looks at ways to better your community and better your prospects. I think trade deals are probably the best way to expand markets for small businesses such as our small businesses here in Port Moody. The challenge, and I agree with Mr. Donnelly here, is that we don't have any of the details that the bill has. So I would implore those who negotiated the deals to start sharing those, but at the same time, good leadership is not saying, I'm not even going to talk about it and I'm not even going to be bound by it. Good leadership is understanding that these are complex negotiations to create the largest free trading zone in the entire world, and that we need to understand those and then discuss them. Because technically, I believe the TPP, and I might be wrong here on the technical rules, has to be ratified by Parliament anyway. And so there's going to be an open discussion in Parliament and then in committee following that. And that's when we can transparently tell the Canadian public and the businesses in Canada what exactly was negotiated and what exactly was agreed on, what were the concessions made, and then make a fact-based decision based on something we don't know right now.
Good
And
leadership.
that's what I want to give you, the other parties, an opportunity to do here. Just take a moment and realize what's happening. The NDP are saying we don't know the details, yet you should all be afraid. This was done in secret. They're trying to scare you from something they don't even know the full extent of the deal.
Can you explain what's in the agreement?
What we need to realize,
Tell us
what we
what's
need
in
to
the
realize,
New markets.
Folks, we let him finish his point, then
economic growth.
feel free to question him afterwards.
see, when they're losing the substance of the issue, they go to the negative attacks. This is not something I'm going to be doing. This deal isn't just good for the Tri-Cities, it is great for the Tri-Cities. We will, Ms. Adcock was correct, we will have a full parliamentary process that's put in place. This trade deal has been negotiated over 11 years. It's been done by the bureaucrats, the independent part of government. There is nothing suspicious about the timing. This is something that was on the verge of being decided for quite a while, and it's very exciting as we look at all the third parties that are now jumping on to endorse it today. The Vancouver Board of Trade, the BC Chamber of Commerce. When we look at these business leaders saying this is a very good deal for them, we need to believe it and trust it. Right here in the Tri-Cities, we need to know what our resources are. We are a port town in Port Moody. We have a lot of trade that's going to come right through here. Our position in the Asia-Pacific Gateway is right at the heart.
Nobody
We have a
disagrees
real
that it's
real
right at the heart.
opportunity to capitalize on that, and we absolutely should.
This is coming from the party that is talking about negative attack ads.
Actually have been a little bit more open about the negotiations, and we would all be a little bit smarter. Instead, we learned today that it came to an agreement, and we still don't know the details. So how can you explain that?
How can you be something,
and
Mr.
it has
Mangler,
been-
just to add to Mr. Matson's comment, how can you be certain that this is a good deal for Canada? Have you read a draft agreement?
All morning, we've been in different negotiations and briefings from the party's leadership on exactly what this deal means for all the different regions. Of course, the dairy farmers had a lot of concerns. We've now got them on side. There was a quote out today from them saying they are happy. They are going to be compensated for the impact that will happen to their communities. What the real impacts out here in the Tri-Cities are is that with more trade, there's more choices for the consumers.
who's we?
There's going to be
I would
lower
say that
prices
that's a
on
no.
different.
He has
There's going to
not
be lower
read the
prices
deal.
on different goods right here for us, and that's why I'm supportive of this trade deal.
You haven't read the trade deal. You don't know what the details are in. You don't know the benefits of what's in the deal, and you
But
don't
you-
know what the downside is.
But we know the NDP are against it.
All right, thank you
We
very
haven't
much.
said we're against it.
I think what we learned there is we all have a bit of research to do for ourselves on this, but thank you for enlightening us on the party positions on that particular topic. So let's see if I can use the technology. I'm supposed to be somewhat technologically sound, but apparently I'm not. So if you could help me out here and take that off the screen, that would be great. And speaking of technology, our next question will be going to Jesse, who does have a digital and technological background, and it's somewhat of a technology question. And again, this will be answered in 1 minute, and then the other candidates are free to jump in. This is a question from the Chamber on Technology and Innovation. How is your party prepared to support the emerging shared economy with companies such as Uber and Airbnb facing outdated regulations at various levels of government?
Yeah, I mean, this is a great example of digital disruption. So digital disruption is when you take a traditional model of business and how you do things and you explode it. And so I think what we've seen is that there's a lot of people in society that want new services like Uber to be able to benefit from a better customer experience. There's also the economic realities that people are facing. And those economic realities have created the sharing economy where they're sharing cars, they're sharing sports equipment. And I think the roles that municipalities have to play with support from the provinces and the feds is how do you make it so that people are protected and they're safe. Taxi cabs, for example, have to pay a large amount of money for licenses that Uber cab drivers don't. But we need to create a new balanced system that allows us to have both that coexist so that we can ensure that people get the services that they want in this new digital economic age, but at the same time that the government protects the safety of those that are living within the jurisdiction that they're governing.
Great, thank you, Jesse, and open up to the other three candidates as well, please.
So the new economy has been, of course, in the making for quite some time. The first time it really came up was in the 1990s, and now we're almost in a new economy 3.0. I very much am a supporter of the industry disruptive sharing industry for many reasons, and one of which is it actually reduces the strains on the use of our resources. It gives people the opportunity to share, even if it's just a car ride. And it also it increases ambitions and motivation to change the status quo, to make us learn and actually evolve a little bit more rather than just staying and putting up with wonderful things the way they are right now, because that doesn't get us anywhere. Not personally and not on an economic level.
I think the new sharing economy offers some exciting innovations and things that we should be looking at, whether it's transportation, food, or in our small businesses. I think this is something that we definitely should embrace and look at. However, we also need to look at the downsides of technology and how they will be used, because there are always the balances of basic human rights, freedoms, what we know over the internet and what government will know over the internet through use. So we definitely excuse me, need to embrace the shared economy and work with the provinces and territories, work with First Nations, work with our local governments to see how we can work together further the new technologies that exist and employ more people, but also at the same time consider what are the downfalls or the concerns that we have to be concerned about.
Fact of the matter is the world is changing, and we need to have governments that are flexible and can adapt to these. I think we'll all agree on this because we see the shift happening all across the world. I think the government of Canada has been really, really slow to react to this. Countries, the UK, the US, all in Europe have all exceeded our capability to innovate, whether it's in government services, whether it's on online access to information, whether it's on generating innovation through the availability of open data. The Canadian government has not done enough, and what we need more people to realize that the next generation is a digital generation. They will never have not known the internet, and that the way that they think and they process and they behave is significantly different than the traditional generations. So as a government, it's incumbent upon us to create a model in a society that's available to them in a manner that they choose, using the device they choose and the mechanism they choose. We just can't sort of ignore it anymore because we're one of the few countries in the world that doesn't have a comprehensive leading digital strategy.
And just to add to what Jessie has put forward, I think some of she's right, our federal government has been slow to invest and help, and our municipal governments have actually taken the lead. And I think Vancouver and even City of Coquitlam is a good example where they've invested in fiber optic cables, and that's something that will transform the way we do business.
I manage that file, so thank you.
That's what we need more of that. And that could transform things like healthcare, how healthcare is delivered. If we innovate by investing, we can make some significant grounds and changes in how we deliver things like healthcare, which we know as an aging demographic in the country and as the amount of tax dollars that go to healthcare, we need to do things better and differently. We also need to invest.
I think also economic growth is based
If I could let Tim just jump in, he did try to get in earlier.
This is my generation. I'm 30 years old. A lot of my friends I went to UBC with are working in this industry. They're in Gastown, they're in Grow Labs. They're doing a lot of things to create new businesses here, and we are competing internationally when it comes to these businesses. There is a lot of pressure for them once they hit a certain threshold to move down to the US. What I will do if I'm elected and go to Ottawa is make sure to champion here in the Tri-Cities. There's a lot of work going on North Road right now with the Koreans, the Korean Canadian community. They're working with the free trade agreement there that was signed, and also looking at opportunities to start tech companies within that industry, and that is something that is really exciting for the Tri-Cities here for the Lower Mainland. I haven't had a chance to be elected here yet. I haven't had a chance to lead, but if given the opportunity, this is something I will definitely champion.
If I could put a fine point on it, though, what would you candidates do here in the Tri-City to bring a shared economy, such as Uber, to the Tri-Cities? What would your parties do to either allow or inhibit the growth of something, using Uber as an example?
Well, one of the things you really need to do is you need to get rid of some archaic legal framework and act in a supporting legal framework that is more on, it's more proactive rather than reactive, and limiting businesses. So right now, the way Uber, if at all, can actually establish itself here, it is facing a resistance, of course, from already established companies, the cab companies, and they find enough ammunition along their bylaws and regulations to keep Uber out. So we need to actually open this whole up. And help new businesses to establish themselves and give them a chance. Jessie.
One of the key things is the lack of a national strategy for dealing with sharing economy, knowledge economy, and innovation economy. So Montreal is fighting the same fight that Vancouver is fighting, Toronto is fighting the same fight, Alberta is fighting it. And there's no collaboration happening between the different levels of government on the issue. So I think one of the key things that the Liberal Party will do is re-engage the Premier, something that the Harper government hasn't done for 10 years, and bring everybody to the table to seek national solutions.
And for fairness, I'll give the other two candidates 20 seconds each to answer that question as well.
Thanks, Dave. An NDP government will invest in infrastructure that works with cities, and we know cities are driving much of this debate. So they also have many of the regulations that will regulate some of these businesses. So an NDP government will work with our provinces and territories, invest in in the shared economy through our cities and that infrastructure, and that's critical. And just to add, I've been on the Canada-Korean Inter-Parliamentary Committee, and that is a trade deal that the NDP have supported.
Thank you, Finn. Tim?
Noted the only trade deal the NDP have ever supported.
If you could go on the topic of Uber for now, in
Will
20
do.
seconds.
The Conservative platform will be to consult with the local communities to listen. We will not be mandating a government Ottawa solution onto local communities. Some of these transitions do need to take place, and some of them are extremely disruptive to the local community. We will listen to people and we will work with them to find the best solution.
Thank you very much, candidates. Going to our pigeonhole comment or question, if I can get this to work, and it says it's about to work, and Aaron is conspiring against me. It's like he's a senator.
Be the one with the most votes, right?
There we go. Here we go. And this question will be started by Marcus from the Green Party. And again, 1 minute, and then the candidates can jump in for another 6 minutes of conversation. And this is actually one of the highest rated voted items here, and it makes sense. It's very local and yet has a lot of federal implications as well. So the question is, what are your plans for infrastructure investment locally here at home in the Tri-Cities? And I know it's from a federal perspective, we can talk really high level and esoteric. Let's bring it down to where we all live here.
There is one of my favorites, which is the West Coast Express. So the Green Party has a program in place to support urban green transportation. And that requires, of course, investments into the infrastructure. Some of you may know, Port Metro Vancouver, together with CP, is planning to add an additional track between our terminal here in Port Moody and Vancouver. Now, when you look at this, this is already decided. I asked myself, so how come we actually neglect our public transportation? And with the West Coast Express, we have a fabulous connection to downtown. Takes 25 minutes from Port Moody, the most. And why does this train not have its own dedicated track? This would be part of an initiative, which has, of course, to be in cooperation with the province and the municipalities, here especially TransLink. But it's part of the whole entire program. Maintaining highways, good thing, but should be limited. Okay.
Great. Thanks, Marcus. And for the rest of the candidates, feel free to jump in for 6 minutes.
Just to what I've heard in consulting with the mayors and councillors over the past 6 years is they want the federal government to be a predictable, stable partner in funding infrastructure. This is the most critical thing in terms of planning long-term projects, whether it's the Evergreen Line, or major roads or bridges. I will say what an NDP government will do in terms of tackling gridlock and commute times is, first of all, you do need one of those national transit plans. So we need a better transit plan that will, and the NDP will invest $1.3 billion over 20 years in terms of predictable, stable, and long-term funding. Will help cities and communities build and repair their local infrastructure, which they've been telling me over and over needs repair, whether it's roads or bridges or transit, which we need to increase. We'll also add $1.5 billion annually by the end of our first mandate. These commitments will more than double the existing transfer to municipalities, bringing the investment to over $5 billion annually, and will rise with inflation after our first mandate. So over 4 years, we will transfer a total of $7.2 billion in new public transit local infrastructure funding directly to municipalities in their provinces. And this is done through a fiscal plan that is through balanced budgets. So it's responsible. It gives the cities what they want in terms of predictability, and gives the cities also what they want is a solid partner in the federal government, something that has been lacking with the Conservative government.
So to jump in there, the Conservatives' track record on infrastructure, especially here in the Tri-Cities, is an A+. We have the Evergreen Line. This is perhaps the largest infrastructure investment into our local communities, and that was done because of the hard advocacy of James Moore. Going forward, though, the Conservatives have been investing in infrastructure continually. We have been focusing on the Asia-Pacific Gateway. That means we're building the roads, the bridges, the port access so that our economy can grow through trade. I do have to point out, though, something that I would do if elected here locally is definitely work with the local mayors and work with the local municipalities, and again, make sure we're not imposing an auto solution on them. Contrasted with the NDP, who Interesting, Mr. Donnelly, that you bring up working with the mayors when you ran a slate of candidates against both the incumbent mayors out here in Port Moody and Coquitlam. How is your relationship with them today?
So folks, please hold your applause so they can get their 6 minutes in. Thank you.
I would like to add that your track record may not necessarily be A+. I see you using your money actually in a way somebody is using the watering can and watering some of the favorite plants, but the rest is kept out. There's no coherent strategy. Surrey just got lucky. They got a promise from you. There's a huge check on the way. I know that Calgary is benefiting from some of your promises, but when I look at overall what your plans are, there is a lot of white on the map. And I'm still trying to get an answer from the Conservatives how you guys actually feel a national infrastructure initiative and here locally should look like and not just benefit your friends in various municipalities.
If I could just interrupt as well, as we discussed in the back, if you address another candidate, we will give that person the opportunity. I failed to give Mr. Donnelly his chance because I was looking at this beautiful crowd. So, Mr. Donnelly, if you'd like to respond to the initial comment.
Sure, I will say the Conservatives have invested in infrastructure. However, they've been playing political favorites, and it goes into specific ridings that benefit many of the candidates or MPs that are Conservative, and they are not providing what the FCM wants, which is a predictable, stable funding partner in providing the kind of infrastructure that's needed for more than just the one-off projects that are happening. So it's not, if you were consulting with the MP or the mayors and councillors, you would know that, and that's what they have told me over and over again. In terms of my involvement at the local level, I get involved and have supported candidates that have asked for their support in New Westminster, in Port Moody, and Coquitlam. My relationship with the mayors and councillors is very good.
So if I may,
yes.
because I haven't had a chance yet on this one, I think empowerment is the key. And I having now worked for the City of Vancouver for the last 2 years, what I've seen is that they do need access to resource because you can't keep raising property taxes. So the Liberal plan is twofold. One, it separates the Canada Building Fund from the new infrastructure investment. We're the only ones who's advocating that we run a deficit by investing $60 billion in infrastructure for public transit, social infrastructure, and green infrastructure across the country. The Canada Build Fund would be used for roads, bridges, border gateways, and things that get Canadian goods to market. It's red tape laden, and it's really hard to get access to that money. I know because I tried last year to get broadband connectivity through that fund, and it just couldn't happen. But the gas tax works really well, and the gas tax where money is transferred to municipalities. And so the infrastructure investment the Liberals are proposing at a time when borrowing it is at an all-time low will see money transferred to the hands of the municipalities. And as a member of Justin Trudeau's Liberal economic team, I'll make sure that Port Moody gets its fair share of that national investment, and that money goes into Port Moody and Coquitlam to ensure that they then have the discretion to spend it according to what the local priorities are. And if they don't spend it, guess what? They still get to keep it. They're not going to lose it.
The Conservative platform and the plan for infrastructure investment does have a very robust system which makes sure that the critical investments are made that are necessary to help grow our economy. It is not political favoritism, as has been incorrectly suggested. It is done in a very straightforward way, in a very reasonable way, and it's done in a way that consults with the local communities. So yes, those communities who do have strong voices do get their share in Ottawa.
Great. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, candidates, for those responses. There you go. All right, we're going on to our next question. All right, so our next speaker will be Tim, answering. You look, oh, sorry, you look at me like I'm. What's going on? So, anyways, with Tim, we have our question here, question 3 from the Chamber, and this has to do with national skills shortages. Moving forward, Canada's competitiveness will depend in large part on its ability to find and foster workers with the skills businesses need to succeed. The shortage of skilled workers is making it impossible to meet the rising needs of many sectors. What would your party do to ensure we better align skills development with immigration policy goals? And how would you address the increasingly complex and costly immigration system currently in place? That's a mouthful, so if anyone needs me to read it again, please, I'll read it again. What would your party do to ensure we better align skills development with immigration policy goals? And how would you address the increasingly complex and costly immigration system currently in place? There you go. You have your 1 minute, Mr. Laidler.
Thank you. Yeah, this is, when we talk about a skilled workforce, it's something that was brought to my attention through the Canadian Chamber of Commerce election platform. It's one of their 4 pillars, and it is something that is vitally important because when we talk about growing the economy, what we're really talking about is the people who work, the jobs there, and that's all of us. What we want to do is making sure we have a skilled workforce here at home, that the training opportunities are in place for people who want to go and get that skilled trade, that they have the opportunity. The Conservatives have announced a program that allows people seeking Red Seal trades to actually get the same student loan programs as those attending universities. That's the first step. The second step is making sure that those who are immigrating here, who want to move to Canada, raise a family here, have an opportunity to bring their credentials over with them, and making sure that those credentials are robustly tested to make sure they are qualified. But we do want to find a clear way that's not cost prohibitive. That's why we also do have a loan program that allows immigrants to get some financial assistance as they transfer their skills over. This will allow us to meet the demand of the skilled workforce that's required in the ongoing future.
Great. Thank you, Tim. And candidates, feel free to jump in for 6 minutes.
As a member of Parliament, this is one of the big concerns that I've heard from new Canadians. Those that have immigrated to the country are finding it extremely frustrating to integrate in terms of finding the jobs that they're trained in. So an NDP government will provide jobs, paid internship and co-ops for not only for our young people, but we'll look at apprenticeship programs, and we'll bring in a foreign credential recognition program that Stephen Harper promised but has failed to deliver. An NDP government will offer grants to professional bodies to develop harmonized national standards for credential program with a single point contact, and will expand new programs that prepare new immigrants for success before they arrive to Canada. And that's like orientation sessions and in visa offices, etc. So we support also things like restoring Statistics Canada's long-form census as a way of getting good information about what our cities need, whether they need skills or whether they need certain or what the opportunities are for our foreign immigrants to come into Canada and to slide seamlessly into opportunities with the proper training that they need and the support that's needed for a federal government to work with the provincial and local governments as well.
So as an immigrant to this country, I can attest it's not that easy actually to make things work. If you have different credentials, it will take you forever to get them recognized. And it is a shame to make people pay for the education, or force them to go through lengthy retraining, even though they already are well educated. There is no need to have scientists drive a cab. That's absolutely wrong from my view, and that's something I would definitely work hard on to address. This country can do better. There should be no skill shortage. And the Green Party would favor a dramatic change in how we address this, including immigration. This country needs more flexibility. Industry should be able to determine how much the need is. In Germany, you have a dual system. There is an apprenticeship in place. The companies pay for your education. They also pay you a little bit more in the first years of your apprenticeship. But at the end, you actually come out with a rock-solid education. You are one of the people needed, and that's the way to go.
So like with all problems, there's no silver bullet solution. We need to have multi-pronged approaches. We need to look at different ways that we attack the problem from different sides. So skills shortage is directly as a result of not enough people being able to afford education. And so today, actually, Justin Trudeau announced a revisiting of the system to create more grants, going from a credit system to a grant system, to give money to people, to students who don't have money. We also said today, actually, that we're going to revisit the student loan program so that students don't have to start repaying those loans until they're making $25,000. So we're addressing it that way. We're addressing it through co-op placements in a $40 million million investment. We're also addressing it through education programs in different areas, targeting specific sectors, science, technology, engineering, and math. And business. We're also looking at providing more education benefits to veterans and their families, First Nations, and making sure that people all around Canada are developing the skills that we need. As well, this problem is only going to multiply when we have new clean technologies and industries that emerge, and so this problem is going to get compounded. As someone who's in the tech sector, I can tell you right now, and we hear this a lot, it's the #1 sector in BC. And one of the biggest problems that we have in BC right now is that there's not enough people to do these jobs. And so we need strategies that are not just one-dimensional in thought, but that they're multifaceted.
We actually need to invest in our youth, in apprenticeships, and in new Canadians, something that has been lacking with this government. What they're doing is not investing in our youth or in apprenticeships or in these skilled trades that are needed. And what they're doing is replacing with temporary foreign workers, which is outsourcing many jobs and bringing in others. And that's not a win-win. It's losing both the skill shortages that could be filled by a lot of new Canadians who are looking to come into the country, reintegrate into our community, but they need the supports and they need the investment. They don't need the kind of abuse that's happening under the temporary foreign worker program that pits workers against companies. That's not what we need. We need investment, and we need stability and strength in identifying those skill gaps and working with companies to fill them.
On the issue of temporary foreign workers, the Conservatives did take leadership and address a system that did have its flaws to make sure that Canadians were getting the first chance at those jobs here at home. Another big thing, though, when it comes to attracting a skilled workforce, it's something I mentioned before, but it's really important that we make sure the housing affordability and the general affordability here in the Tri-Cities is there. The jobs can be here, the people can be skilled, but if they can't afford to move here, they're going to be looking at different options, especially if they're coming in from other countries. So under the Conservatives' plan of lowering taxes, doing things like the universal child care benefit, which gives money straight back into the pockets of families that want to make those decisions. That's ways that we can make things a little bit more affordable for people. And again, investigating the foreign home ownership, that is something that will allow more Canadians to buy homes right here in the Tri-Cities.
The
I found it
Conservatives
very
did
interesting that a
create
party that is
temporary
promoting
foreign problem.
absolutely
Worker
free
problem.
market is now trying to put limits on certain costs and beginning to talk about affordability. I think there's some hypocrisy in the game. It's lovely, but thanks for jumping on the wagon.
We're going to add another 2 minutes to this because there is something that was missing in the answer. I think it was due to the complexity of the question. And the last part of the question, and it really wasn't touched on by any of the candidates, so I'm hoping adding 2 minutes will allow this to happen. And it starts off with, how would you address the increasingly complex and costly immigration system currently in place? Whoever wants to start with that will add 2 minutes to this conversation.
Yeah, one of the things an NDP government will do is focus on streamlining processing and wait times. What I've experienced with many clients coming in talking about reunification or bringing sponsoring families is extreme frustration, waiting, an unnecessary wait. It could take up to 4 years to sponsor a family to bring in. We've heard recently about the Syrian refugee crisis and Canada's lack of response in terms of dealing with that crisis. I had an experience with someone who, Tima Kurdi, who many of you heard about. Her family was trying to bring in both her brothers and their families, and it was extremely frustrating for her. She ended up having to choose one family that she would sponsor and then work on the second family because she could only afford one. That was turned down, and that ended in tragedy. And this is too many families are experiencing this, and we need to work together to try and solve the problem that is happening in the Middle East, to solve the biggest humanitarian crisis that is happening since the Second World War.
And if I can have someone else jump in, we don't want to use all the time. If I can have Jesse go first then, and we'll make sure, Tim, you can finish up with 30 seconds.
I think the question was about the
please.
connection of skills and immigration. So I think one of the things we need to recognize is that the Harper government had 10 years to get it right, and they haven't gotten it right. They've only made it worse. And so we have more temporary foreign workers than we've ever had. We have issues with family reunification. And I think the challenge now for us moving forward is that not only are we getting ourselves out of a skills deficit, so we have to fix the system, but we also have to keep up with the changing demands of the future. And so it's really necessary for us to look at the entire solution and look at our education system, look at our co-op placement system, give credit where credit is due, and actually do something about it rather than just talking about doing something about
And
it.
Tim, we'll give you 30 seconds to finish up.
The Conservatives' approach to this is quite consistent. We will continue to cut red tape wherever we can. Cutting red tape for immigrants coming into this country is definitely going to help them. But I do need to go back and address the issue here. Mr. Donnelly, when you bring up the Curdy family that lives here, we've all seen that tragedy. In the Tri-City News, you said you did not blame the Minister of Immigration, you didn't even blame this government. Yet, your leader in the French language debate just last week attacked Mr. Harper again for this issue. So do you understand how this is misleading to Canadians when you bring it up again here, saying that it's a lack of our immigration policies and it's our fault as the government?
Tim, that's your 30 seconds, and to fulfill the rules, I'll give you 15 seconds, and I know that's not a lot of time, Finn, but if you'd like to respond to that in 15 seconds.
Yeah, absolutely. I did what I could to help this family, and I think as an MP, I would do everything that I could to help families like her that want nothing more than to get their families out of harm's way. And Thomas Mulcair and the NDP are very frustrated with the lack of support for immigrants, for new Canadians, and for those that are suffering, like being bombed in places that need to be taken out of harm's way. And when you have willing partners like
I need you to wrap it up then,
families
Finn,
in the Tri-City area willing to support and sponsor those, we need to get those families here.
Great. Thank you very much. Thanks for indulging with the extra couple of minutes. I wanted to make sure that we answered that pretty complex question. And of course, I think we solved everything there in 8 minutes. So we're done with that. All right, we're going to a pigeonhole question. And this is for Mr. Finn Donnelly to start out with. And it's apropos that we're here in the City of the Arts. And that question is, how would your party increase support to Canadian arts and culture, especially, I love this, especially in Port Moody, the City of the Arts? And I'm pretty sure that came from Mayor Mike Clay. But nonetheless, if you'd like to start with 1 minute, we'll go with a 6-minute conversation after that. So to respond, I've answered 2 of the top 5 so far, and this is supposed to be a Port Moody debate, Coquitlam debate, and it's also part of the chamber. So we're trying to ask a variety of questions, but also based on the economics. If you do feel I'm being unfair, I'm certainly open to that, but I think I've asked quite a breadth of questions so far, but I'll certainly keep your observation under advisement. So thank you so much. If we can go on with Finn.
Sure. I think the City of Port Moody has done a great job in terms of investing in its arts community, but it can only do so much on the property tax dollar. It does need a willing partner in the federal government and the provincial government, and that has not been the case with the federal government. An NDP government would invest in our arts community. We would work with not only infrastructure, but also arts. Arts is a big driver in terms of local economy, so it's an important factor. On the big picture, we would reverse the Conservatives' $115 million cuts to CBC and Radio-Canada. We would guarantee stable funding to the CBC so they stay strong and independent. And we would help Canadian talent thrive on digital and traditional platforms. And I think the 150th anniversary of Confederation will offer an excellent opportunity to invest in arts and culture in our local community. I grew up doing not only sports, but also arts in the Tri-Cities, and I want to see that maintained.
And for the other candidates, for 6 minutes.
I would support Finn in his endeavor. However, what's missing to keep Port Moody and other communities vital communities when it comes to the art is also to make sure that our schools have the financial resources to train the kids again in the arts. And go out and do us a great public service, to be honest. And when it comes to the CBC, which of course can be received here in Port Moody, that's what I hear. In addition to giving it money and giving money back, it certainly needs reform. I feel it has a mandate to keep Canadians informed, fairly informed, without taking position. In return, of course, it should get all the finances it needs, but it really has to live up to its mandate.
So in terms of the Liberal Party's plan, we'll also restore that $150 million in funding for the CBC, which is an icon in preserving our Canadian identity. In addition, we also have a Canada Council for the Arts Fund, which is one that, as I understand from my research, because I'm not a career politician, so I've had to research a lot of these things that they teach us, is a fund that artists and musicians can tap into, and they can then fund projects that they want to produce locally. In addition to those funds, part of the social infrastructure investment that we're the only ones talking about making over the next 10 years allows money to be disseminated down to the municipalities so that they can prioritize according to the cultures and the needs of the local communities. So in our case, we are a community that thrives on arts and culture, and in this case, the mayor and council would have the ability to then make those spending decisions on how they were going to use their share of the social infrastructure money. So I think what we do is we then prop up our municipalities to be able to create the community centers and recreational programs that they need, as well as culture and art support.
As for myself, I do have a deep appreciation for the arts. Many people know that I did serve in Afghanistan, and coming home I worked hard with the veterans dealing with issues like post-traumatic stress disorder. We created an organization that helped them get into support groups and transition and overcome those issues. One of the side projects that spun off from that, though, was an arts-based project. A project that we ended up bringing veterans together with First Nation carvers and carving a contemporary pole with images from Afghanistan and names of the fallen. This was something that opened my eyes to just how an untraditional approach in learning from First Nations could really be a benefit to a demographic that we don't often associate with the arts, military veterans. And those are the sort of experiences I would take to Ottawa, and I would look for opportunities to continue to prop up arts right here in the Tri-Cities, because I know how vitally important it is. But the main difference between our plan and the other parties is that we will do it with a balanced budget and keeping taxes low.
Mr. Laidler, you have served in the armed forces. You just mentioned that, and for that I thank you. Thank you for your service. However, your government has made huge cuts to the arts over the years that were preceded by cuts by the Liberal government. This is not a track record, and then you can't, right at the election time, just come in and make vast promises of spending without providing a balanced budget. And that's what the NDP will do. We will rejig the priorities to focus on the needs of cities, small businesses, families in the Tri-Cities, and we will invest in arts and culture and in those communities. We will not promise something that we can't deliver. And that's what I see with happening with the Liberals.
Actually, that's not true, because I think what we as a society need to do right now in this election is make a choice. We can make a choice between working within the same system, or we can choose to expand our system. We can look at leadership and evolution and doing things a little bit differently. We can recognize what municipalities are saying and saying we need more federal support in the way of resources and funding. And so we've modeled this after the gas tax, where the municipalities actually get the money to spend. The problem doesn't go away at all. Now is the time to invest when money is at a historic low. Economists around the world have said that in times of recession, this is what you do to create jobs, support your local governments. We need to do something different. We can't do more of the same. You're taking the plan that the Conservatives have done and you're retinkering with it and presenting it back to us. The Liberals are the only ones that are proposing something different.
Do you actually notice the bickering about the money?
If I could have Finn address that, Marcus, first, because he was sort of addressed on that, and then certainly your turn.
Thanks, Dave. No, you're actually, it's not true that the NDP is just reordering Conservative priorities. That can't be further from the truth. I've already explained about things like healthcare, how we'd make huge differences, how we'd bring in childcare at $15 a day, which is extremely affordable. These are new plans that would really invest in our communities. It's not true that the Liberals have a costed plan. They are driving us into debt, and further into debt by deficit spending. And this is not what Tri-City families have told me that they want to do. They are very concerned about tax spending. They want us to get our priorities right. But they want to do that and be fiscally responsible, which I think what Tom Mulcair and the NDP offer.
As you addressed the Liberal Party, we'll have Jesse, and then Marcus, you will finish off regardless of the time.
So just in terms, you brought up healthcare. I said, let me again use the same example around tinkering with the same system. The healthcare proposals that we've put forward recognize that we have an aging population and that we need to invest more in in-home care. And so a lot of our money is going towards creating that in-home service. My family has made use of it with my mother-in-law, my grandfather, and people at home need help caring for their seniors. The other thing is evolving our healthcare system. 1 in 5 Canadians now struggle with a mental health issue. The Liberal Party is the only one talking about introducing access to mental health services for everybody in Canada, as well as for veterans and first responders. That's called evolution.
And if I could have Marcus wrap it up with 45 seconds, please.
All right, great, thanks. So it's really tiresome to listen to the bickering about the money and the balanced budgets when it comes to the arts, simply because the arts are so important. It helps people to express themselves, let it be disabled people, let it people with serious other challenges, let it be the kids, let it be us. It's part of our identity. So I think it is wrong to put a price tag on it and talk about balanced budgets. It's like massacre, right? Buy this, $5. Pay for this, $20. But the reward is actually priceless. So, and I would say under a Green government, or at least a minority-supported government by the Greens, you will not find the talk when it comes to the budget about being balanced.
Great. Thank you, Marcus. Thank you, candidates. And actually, we're about an hour in. Do any of the candidates need water delivered by people in the audience to you? Are you guys all good?
Oh, you're the same.
All right.